Las Vegas hotel casino history, Wilbur Clark's Desert Inn. In 1944, 35-year-old Wilbur Clark sold a hotel he owned in San Diego to move to Las Vegas and buy a controlling interest in the El Rancho Vegas on Highway 91. But Clark wanted to design his own new high-class hotel from the ground up. In 1946, Wilbur Clark uses the $1.5 million proceeds from the sale of his share of the El Rancho Vegas and another casino to begin the process of building the Desert Inn. But he runs out of money in 1947 because post-World War II building materials are expensive and scarce. In 1945, when slender, dapper Wilbur Clark stood in the barren desert with a blueprint in his hand and visualized the completion of his dream, he did not know then that it would be 5 long years before the Desert Inn became a reality. For nearly 2 years, the framed structure sat in the hot desert sun, looking more like an ancient relic than a nascent casino. After World War II, Meyer Lansky dispatched Mo Dalitz to Las Vegas to check on Bugsy Siegel. Bugsy's murder came soon after Mo made his report. Dalitz later said, "All in all, the opportunity in Las Vegas seemed too good for me and my associates to pass up." In 1949, a partnership bailout offer miraculously arrived from Dalitz's Mayfield Road gang in Cleveland, Ohio. The Little Jewish Navy offered to put up the outstanding $90,000 startup plus $3.4 million in exchange for 74% ownership, and they would be more than happy to let Clark call it Wilbur Clark's Desert Inn. So much the better for the hidden owners. When the Nevada Tax Commission, which regulated gambling at the time, hesitated to deliver the requisite license thanks to a damning report on Dalitz, juice was promptly supplied by Galveston, Texas mafioso and Desert Inn investor Sam Maceo to Senator Pat McCarran, and the precious document appeared as if by magic. Wilbur Clark owned the largest share with over 17%. Mo Dalitz and his associates owned 13% each or less, while Clark remained president and chief spokesman for the hotel. The Desert Inn Syndicate was typical of other syndicates in that it had 3 approximate levels. On the surface, Wilbur Clark, who had never been convicted of a crime, had his name in lights and was the front for the second layer of actual owner-operators, which included Dalitz and other Mayfield Road figures. These men often had previous gambling convictions or were suspected of affiliation with organized crime, but they were clean enough to obtain gaming licenses. Behind this group of official investors was an even more shadowy group of investors who, for a host of reasons, could not receive official licenses. Meyer Lansky and Frank Costello were 2 of the most notorious examples of this third layer. These undercover investors did not, for the most part, interfere with the day-to-day operations of their casino and were usually content to receive their cut. But these syndicates were not usually the freewheeling, happy-go-lucky gamblers, shady investors, and gruff mobsters that have become legend. Rather, they were pedestrian, even soulless business partnerships.
The one-time kingpin of Cleveland's bootleg whiskey racket, former operator of illegal gambling dens in Ohio and Kentucky, and a reputed player in the national crime organization known as the Syndicate. Dalitz possessed a pedigree tailor-made for a place like Las Vegas.
Remember, Las Vegas would not be here today but for these guys. Without Mo and those guys, there would have been no money. There would have been no expertise. You could have all the money in the world, but if you don't know how to run the place, you get taken. And, they knew how to look for the guys who were going to take them. They knew how to deal with the guys who were going to take them. And they dealt a little differently than the people today who are worried about constitutional rights and all that other kind of stuff. They dealt in their own way.
Benny Goodman and the orchestra, Bugle Call Rag, 15 before 12 noon on KENO, and the big event tonight, the grand opening of Wilbur Clark's Desert Inn Hotel and Casino out there on Highway 91, with Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy. Should be a lot of fun, folks.
Wilbur Clark's Desert Inn would be the 5th hotel casino on the Strip, costing $4.5 million, and it opened with a 2-day gala on April 24, 1950, as the largest hotel in southern Nevada with 300 rooms. Clark spent $75,000 to bring in news reporters to publicize the opening in papers throughout the country. Local newspapers called it the most brilliant social event in the history of the Strip. The Desert Inn proved that the Flamingo was not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. In fact, almost everybody who amounts to anything in Nevada was there except the children and the bank clerks, both of whom are barred from gambling houses. The New Yorker called it a chic resort and a glamorous mecca for the rich and famous, and a moderately gigantic temple of chance. Desert Inn would be known as the DI to locals and regulars. Armed with Dalitz's dirty money, Clark built the Strip's first fountain and curved pool in contrast to the existing rectangular-shaped square pools.
The colorful patio and pool is the gathering place for both young and old. Johnny Ray, one of America's top singing stars, takes time out from the rigors of show business to relax under a warm Nevada sun. People around the pool are very often treated to a bit of entertainment, put on by divers who look very professional. A score of maneuvers from the high and low diving boards places these men in a class that could come close to being Olympic form. It makes very little difference just how the visitor wishes to take his relaxation at this resort playground. He can be assured that he will find it here, and only for the asking.
He also built the first curvaceous sign, a neon saguaro cactus sign that appeared to grow from the roof. Although saguaro cactus is native to Arizona and Southern California, not Southern Nevada. Wilbur had his little nursery built for people that brought their children. It was a cute house. It was called the Doll House.
Outside, the marquee displays top names in show business who can be seen nightly in the Painted Desert Room. A visit to the Painted Desert Room is an experience that anyone will long remember. Dining and dancing, exchanging reviews of the day's activities, planning tomorrow's events. Here is an example of the informal atmosphere that exists among those who patronize the top entertainment spot in Las Vegas. The lights dim, and on stage it's showtime. The Don Arden dancers are going through a musical review that would rival any of Broadway's top productions. This number was created to bring out all of autumn's glorious colors on a stage that was built to capture the beauty of this setting. These dancers go through their routines with a rhythm and precision that makes this the tops in nightclub shows and puts them in a class by themselves. This nightly review is given a round of applause by an enthusiastic audience. Yes, indeed, nighttime is always fun time at Las Vegas.
Dalitz also built the first entertainment lounge in a strip hotel and brought about nonstop entertainment by installing a revolving stage so that one musical group could exit while another one started to perform. The 2,400 square foot casino was the largest in Las Vegas. The third-floor Skyroom Lounge overlooked a pool and the Dancing Waters, which was a series of fountains that were set to music and lit up by colored lights.
The colorful spectacle, Dancing Waters, is staged in the patio, free of charge, for all those who care to witness this magnificent display, set to music fitting the mood. An evening of gaiety usually gets underway in the Sky Room, high atop our hotel. This room is very popular with everyone because the entertainment is to a large extent provided for by the patrons themselves. It is the meeting place for many vacationers to this desert resort, and they find it to be a spot where old friendships are renewed and new friends are made, while everyone enjoys an evening of fun and relaxation.
On the first Saturday after the opening, the casino lost $87,000 in one 8-hour shift, $36,000 to one lucky winner. But it was the best publicity any resort could ask for. People flocked to the resort, and by the following Friday, the casino had recouped its losses, with the first week's profits totaling $750,000. Jack Butler, who worked from opening day until 1989, said, "Nobody went to bed. At 5 o'clock in the morning, the place would still be packed. Wilbur would shine a light on a chair every hour, and whoever was sitting in the chair would get a drink. People loved that. All the other bosses from the hotels came to play at the DI. I think the personality of the place made it so different. We had an open hand to the guests. In the first 15 years I worked there, we never had a staff meeting. Didn't need one." The first general manager came from one of the best hotels in San Francisco, while the chef had worked at the Ritz Paris in France and for the Duke of Windsor. The Desert Inn, with 300 employees, the largest employer in the state, propelled the area previously known as lowercase A Strip to uppercase The Strip. That's when all the gangsters started coming. The Desert Inn would become the mafia's main cash cow. 3 times a day, Miami hotel men would walk into the counting room, 3 for us, 1 for the government, and 2 for Meyer Lansky, a lieutenant's daughter overheard. After the mules carried the money to Miami, Lansky distributed the profits to partners internationally or made deposits into Swiss accounts. The year of the Desert Inn's opening, he financed drug laboratories in Turkey, establishing a new heroin route through Marseille, France. His Las Vegas casinos now financed a vast new international network of narcotics. 2 investigative reporters later wrote that profits from the drug traffic would come back in various forms to build modern Las Vegas. Lansky, the mafia's unofficial chief financial officer, had turned Las Vegas into a global financial capital. Throughout the 50s, that secret, indirect, revolving traffic between the Strip and Switzerland was one of the heaviest flows of international capital of the era, making Las Vegas a world center of finance long before many knew its name. A wiretap captured Doc Statcher's explanation of their approach. "We worked out a deal that gave each group an interlocking interest in each other's hotels, and our lawyers set it up so that nobody could really tell who owned what out there." The lead counsel for the state tax commission once told the press that someone from Chicago had warned him to lay off or get a bullet in your back. He contended in 1955 that the biggest hoodlums are hard to catch because it was so difficult to determine where their money came from. At its best, he concluded, gambling is an evil business. Without strict supervision, it attracts evil persons, the hoodlum, the mobster, the criminal, the near criminal, that great fraternity of silent men who live on the fringe of the law, only overstepping the line when necessary, and then in a manner to divert suspicion and responsibility. Hank Greenspun was the first publicity director, but months after the grand opening, he started the Las Vegas Sun newspaper on July 1st, 1950. Wilbur Clark was the quintessential frontman. The dapper, genial Clark was the face of Las Vegas for many across the nation in the 1950s. In a feature article in American Legion magazine, Joseph Stalker called him the city's golden boy. When Stalker asked Clark about being associated with the Syndicate of Cleveland and Detroit gamblers, Clark dismissively responded, "It was embarrassing at first, but they're nice guys, so what the hell?"
One of the pioneer developers who felt that Las Vegas had great possibilities as a resort city is Wilbur Clark. Mr. Clark is not only kept very busy acting as host at the inn which bears his name, but is also an active member in many civic organizations and is constantly on the alert for any kind of development that will add to the welfare of the community and its citizens.
Wilbur and his wife, Toni, were world travelers who, wherever they went, promoted not only the DI, but also Las Vegas in the days before the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority was formed for that purpose.
Wilbur Clark was a publicity hound. He was just a wonderful, wonderful guy. He would go along with anything.
Wilbur was such an ambassador for Las Vegas. He would travel the world over promoting this town, and of course his own hotel too.
Tony Clark became a local society legend for her elaborate parties at the couple's opulent home on the Desert Inn Country Club golf course. She became the social hub in town and was fondly referred to by many as the First Lady of Las Vegas. Clark was perhaps the most famous hotelier in Las Vegas throughout the 1950s, playing host to the rich and famous such as former President Harry Truman, Senator John F. Kennedy, Winston Churchill, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, and TV host Ed Sullivan.
Just before dawn, on January 27, 1951, a blinding white flash lit up the Las Vegas sky. Minutes later, there was a thundering blast that left a trail of broken glass from Fremont Street clear out to the Strip. Atomic bomb testing at the Nevada Proving Facility had begun.
2, 1, T0.
Over the next 12 years, 120 nuclear devices, an average of one every 5 weeks, would be detonated above ground in the Mojave Desert, just 65 miles from downtown Las Vegas.
Casinos like the Desert Inn flaunted their north-facing vistas, offering special atomic cocktails and Dom bomb parties where crowds danced and quaffed until a flash lit the sky. Desert Inn had the tallest place to watch the bombs on the Strip with a third-story sky room. The flash from the explosion could be seen in neighboring states. On the eve of detonations, beginning at midnight, guests would drink and sing until the flash of the bomb lit up the night sky. Clark built Las Vegas's largest showroom to host the Mafia's favorite performer. A troubled Frank Sinatra made his Las Vegas debut on September 4, 1951. Only a few days before had come news that Sinatra, after a fight with Ava Gardner, attempted to commit suicide in Lake Tahoe. He denied it, calling it a sleeping pill miscalculation. Sinatra was divorcing his wife to marry movie star Ava Gardner, and he was in his low point of his career. The Desert Inn engagement was not a hot ticket. I was there at the time, recalled Sinatra pal Sonny King. You could sit in the back and have a cola and not see many heads in front of you. It was empty. Sinatra said, Wilbur Clark gave me my first job in Las Vegas. For $6 you got a filet mignon dinner and me. Hank Greenspun described Sinatra as a homely kid with a sweet, natural appeal. A good show, signs of greatness. The Entertainment Reporter said, the guy is one of the greatest showmen seen in these parts. Sinatra's second and last contract with the Desert Inn was in July 1952. He would become a part owner and performer at the Sands when it opened in December of that year. Also in 1952, Clark added a $1 million 18-hole golf course, which for years attracted the top professional golfers and national media coverage. The course played host to the famed Tournament of Champions from its inception in 1953 through 1966. The resort had the distinction of being the only course in the United States to have annually hosted 3 championship tour events: the PGA Tour's Las Vegas Invitational, the Las Vegas Senior Classic, and the LPGA Las Vegas International. And it was named one of the top resort courses by Golf Digest magazine.
Transforming arid desert wasteland like this into a golf course complete with palm trees, lagoons, and clubhouse was not an easy thing to visualize. Even the most imaginative businessman would be justified in looking upon such a project with a bit of skepticism. But nevertheless, Mr. Clark and his associates went ahead, and today, the completed course is said by amateur and professional alike to be one of the country's finest. The clubhouse was designed to take care of all the golfers' needs. Planning and development took about 2 years, to say nothing of the tremendous cost. When Wilbur Clark started making plans for the course, he was confronted with many problems, both geographical and physical. The plans called for 7 lagoons, and these lagoons have to be spotted at different locations in a soil that just naturally absorbs water like a sponge. The fairways, all of them several hundred yards in length, are laid out so as to reduce the physical strain on the player as much as possible. There are 42 sand traps, 5,000 trees and shrubs landscaped on the 165 acres which comprise the course.
Desert Inn was one of the first local resorts to end the practice of prohibiting blacks from being guests in the hotel and casino. when black U.S. diplomat and 1950 Nobel Peace Prize recipient Ralph Bunche visited Las Vegas during the height of Strip hotel segregation in the 1950s, Desert Inn managing director Allard Rowan not only got Bunche a room at the resort, but also safely escorted him to it. When Sammy Davis Jr. wanted to play a round of golf on the whites-only Desert Inn golf course, Rowan was at his side, defending the iconic black entertainer's right to be there, despite the evil eye from some guests. When singer Pearl Bailey wanted to leave the Desert Inn showroom for the Flamingo, it was Rowan who negotiated with the segregated Flamingo to give Bailey the black chorus line she wanted. Erwin Molaski said Rowan made the Desert Inn the icon of the Strip. Allard was the forerunner of the kind of people who run Las Vegas today, a college graduate who brought modern-day efficient business practices to his industry. In the late 1950s, Mo Dalitz entered into a partnership with Allard Rowan, Erwin Molaski, and Merv Adelson to form Paradise Development, which kicked off a series of projects by building Sunrise Hospital, which opened in December 1958.
Not only did he build the Desert Inn, he and his partners founded the Las Vegas Country Club, opened the Stardust Hotel, built the Boulevard Mall, Sunrise Hospital, the Sundance Hotel, and a host of other Las Vegas landmarks.
Apparently, Mo Dalitz used Sunrise Hospital to help move the mob's money out of Las Vegas.
According to some, the hospital had a secret, more sinister purpose.
The story was told to me by Chicago mob people that what they really had going for them was they would send a man out, he would be met at the McCarran Airport, put in an ambulance, driven to Sunrise Hospital, spend a few days there, back in the ambulance, back to the airport, back to Chicago, and that's where the skim was going. Very clever. Put bandages on a guy, who's going to check?
In 1958, Tony Martin signed a $1 million deal over 5 years to perform at the DI. At $25,000 weekly, it is the highest total salary ever paid a performer in Vegas.
I want you to meet one of the pioneers of Las Vegas, Wilbur Clark, who runs the Desert Inn, the Stardust Hotel, and the Royal Nevada. What about this famed hotel of yours? Why should I or Harry Smith or anyone else want to come to the Desert Inn?
Well, I think that we have many reasons. I think the whole world would like to come to Las Vegas. We have wonderful climate, the greatest shows in the world, swimming and skating and skiing and golfing. We have one of the greatest golf courses in the world, we believe.
Well, I understand that the annual Tournament of Champions is also played at your golf course. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
You must win a sponsored PGA tournament in order to be invited to our tournament.
Now, Mr. Clark, isn't there something else that might sort of vaguely interest the people that come to your home?
I guess you mean gaming. We do have a little of that, yes.
I understand that gambling is legal in Nevada.
It's run on a very high plane by a state tax commission, which has been in since 1931. The legalized gambling has. The state tax commission has been in since 1945.
Confidentially, Mr. Clark, what are a player's chances out there? Aren't the cards sort of stacked against the player?
Well, actually, a player can play with the house or against the house.
Now, what percentage does the player have against the house, let's say in dice, for instance?
If you're betting on dice and you want to bet against the house, the odds are less than 1.5% against you. But you can also bet with the house, and the odds are 1.36.
Well, what about roulette or 21 or the other games you play out there?
Roulette has a certain percentage. You get so many checks back for the amount of money you bet, and there's 38 numbers against 36, so that's an actual percentage of 5 5/19. Now, if you want to go into blackjack, blackjack is a little different than any game. They claim that it's about 2.5% against the player, but actually you can't tell, because one player with a dealer is different than 2 players, and 3 players is different than 4 players.
One of the first sights one sees when coming from the airport is the world-famous Wilbur Clark's Desert Inn. This luxurious oasis in the Nevada desert is one of the largest hotels in that state. 400 air-conditioned rooms and 5 restaurants, as well as cocktail lounges, cater to the everyday needs of the guests. But for relaxation, entertainment, This hotel has really gone overboard. Many of the rooms face this magnificent swimming pool, which is enjoyed by guests both young and old. Other rooms overlook the world-renowned Desert Inn golf course, where the annual Tournament of Champions is played. It's the only hotel-owned golf course in Las Vegas. Wilbur Clark's Desert Inn offers the most outstanding names in the entertainment industry and shows that outdo even the best Broadway productions. Stars of stage, screen, and television, dancers, singers, comedians, variety acts, and showgirls galore perform in shows twice nightly for the dinner audience and again at midnight. Well-known comedian Jackie Miles is always a favorite here. And a favorite personality backstage is Wilbur Clark, president of the Desert Inn, who's given so many young entertainers their springboard to stardom. The gaming rooms are to many the main attraction at a Las Vegas hotel. But the Desert Inn is so designed as to offer a variety of activities for every member of the family. If gaming is the main objective of one's stay at the hotel, the Desert Inn offers 21 roulette, dice tables, and other games of chance, all of which are supervised by a Nevada State Commission. If dancing is your pleasure, the Desert Inn Starlight Room permits you to enjoy this activity in a friendly, informal atmosphere. 2 dance bands offer continuous entertainment till the dawn sun breaks over the desert horizon. This, then, has been but a brief glimpse at the variety of activities presented for your enjoyment at one of Las Vegas's leading luxury hotels, Wilbur Clark's famous Desert Inn.
In 1960, local law enforcement got help from the state when Governor Grant Sawyer supported the Gaming Control Board's creation of a list of excluded persons, or the Black Book, which prohibited 11 people with substantial criminal records from entering hotel casinos, including Marshal Caifano. In a showy enforcement action on October 28, 1960, Black Book member Marshal Caifano was having a drink at the Desert Inn when a gaming board flying squad descended upon the casino, led by the board chairman, who was an aggressive former FBI agent.
In Vegas, Caifano was a so-called outside man, the muscle needed to enforce whatever the mob's men inside the casino needed done. Furious that the state could exclude him from casinos without notice, Caifano fought the Black Book all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court and lost.
The United States Supreme Court says, in effect, gambling is a privilege, it's not a right, and if they see it fit to this privileged industry to bar people from entering casinos, they have a right to do it.
Marshal Caifano was eventually removed from the Black Book after his death. But mob boss Mo Dalitz was not put in the Black Book because while the FBI concluded in 1964 that Dalitz had long been one of the top hoodlums directing Las Vegas operations, the longtime secretary of the State Tax Commission argued that the man behind the Desert Inn was the individual most responsible for the success of the Las Vegas Strip in the 1950s and that he was a good citizen, a man who invested in the town.
Few would argue that Mo Dalitz is not Mr. Las Vegas.
The county and the city are very happy that ADL would give us this opportunity to share in their time to show our affection for you in this award and share in the happiness that you have today. And in the sky is a big neon sign, Mo, that says, starring Mo Dalitz, Mr. Las Vegas. So I'm delighted to present this to you.
When Mo Dalitz died in 1989, former Governor Grant Sawyer said, "His conduct has always been exemplary, and in my opinion, he was a good citizen in every way." In 1961, Liz Taylor, disguised as a waitress, created havoc at the closing show of her husband, Eddie Fisher, stumbling around the dining room, dropping crockery, and abusing the song star in a highly pitched Cockney voice. Liz completely fooled her husband, who stood in bafflement on stage. It was only when she removed her wig that Eddie recognized her. The 9-story St. Andrew's Tower opened in 1963. Clark's role in the DI had diminished by the early 1960s. He sold his stake in the hotel in 1964 and died a year later of a heart attack at the age of 56. Bell Captain Jack Butler said, "Wilbur was the greatest guy. Without him, this town never would have gotten off the ground. Everyone came into the club just to see him, and he was all over the postcards. He was the only boss who would agree to have his picture taken." In the 1960s, the FBI was coming after the mob, but the mob had some connections. Nevada Governor Grant Sawyer requested prosecution of the FBI for wiretapping the Desert Inn. The FBI said that the wiretap was installed to seek information about persons believed to be diverting profits to criminal activities, but wiretapping violated Nevada law. The governor spoke to President Johnson about the wiretapping 2 months after he took office. Shortly thereafter, the president issued an executive order prohibiting the practice.
In the early hours of Thanksgiving morning, 1966, a private train rattled into a desolate crossing in North Las Vegas. From the trailing car emerged one of the wealthiest men in the world, the legendary billionaire recluse, Howard Hughes. In his youth, Hughes had been a full-fledged American celebrity. The dashing movie producer whose exploits had provided endless fodder for gossip columns. The record-breaking aviator who had been honored with a hero's ticker tape parade. But though only a few people knew it, that man was long gone. Plagued by chronic back pain and hopelessly addicted to narcotics, Hughes had spent much of the last 3 years in near total seclusion. Now he had come to Las Vegas, his old stomping ground, seeking tax shelter for his riches and refuge from the hounding attention of the press. Accompanied by a phalanx of beefy Mormon caretakers, he took up residence at Mo Dalitz's place, the famed Desert Inn, where an old acquaintance, Las Vegas Sun publisher Hank Greenspun, had reserved the entire 8th and 9th floors for his personal use.
Mr. Hughes spent most of his time in bed, propped up with pillows, of course, and he was nude most of the time. Sometimes, if it got cool, he would put a jacket on his shoulders. He would never go outside the room.
He explained to me that he did not want to make any public appearances in the future, that he wanted me to become his alter ego. He wanted me to convince the world that when they spoke to me, they in reality were speaking to Howard Hughes.
Remarkably, Mayhew had never been allowed to meet his employer face to face, for Howard Hughes was no longer the dashing playboy of his youth. Following a plane crash, an addiction to pain-killing drugs had turned the billionaire into a paranoid recluse. The only images of Hughes in Las Vegas are an artist's impressions based on eyewitness accounts. Confining himself to a blacked-out room on the 9th floor of the Desert Inn Hotel, Hughes allowed only 6 or 7 trusted aides into his inner sanctum. Almost all were Mormon. Though he was ill, Hughes' business brain was still sharp. He kept lines of communication open 24 hours a day with Robert Mayhew.
Howard Hughes and I communicated either by telephone or he would take a legal pad of paper and write me a note. Sometimes we were literally on the telephone for almost 15 or 16 hours, having all of these decisions to make. The realization that I had never sat down and faced this man was absolutely awesome.
1 week passed, then 2. But to Dalitz's dismay, Hughes and his entourage showed no signs of moving on.
Never gambled. And his aides were all Mormon, so they didn't gamble and they didn't drink and they didn't tip because they didn't need any of the services. So it was a bust for the hotel. So around Christmas time, Mo called my dad and says, "You got to get this no good bum out of here because my high rollers are coming in. I need those suites."
I received a phone call from their attorney. He was absolutely furious. And I had never heard him swear before, but he was swearing on the phone. And finally, when he calmed down, I said, "Jack, what is bothering you?" He said, "I'm holding in my hand right now a letter, return receipt requested, to signee only, directed to Howard Hughes at the Desert Inn Hotel's penthouse floor, and it was returned not known at this address." And he says, "If the SOB is not there, if he's not there, then let us have our rooms. If he's there, we're going to kick him out bodily in 48 hours. And I knew then that we had pushed the envelope just as far as we could. So I called him and told him about it, and he said, "What do you suggest we do?" And I said, well, kiddingly at first, I said, "If you want a place to sleep, I suggest you buy a hotel." And he said, get started on it right away.
Hughes once said, "Just remember, there's no one I can't buy or destroy. I'm not a paranoid, deranged millionaire. God damn it, I'm a billionaire."
On April Fool's Day, 1967, official title to the Desert Inn passed from Mo Dalitz and his partners to Howard Hughes.
Hughes bought the operating rights to the Desert Inn for $13.2 million, plus a yearly lease of about $1.1 million, while also paying all operating expenses like taxes, insurance, utilities, and repairs. Neither Hughes nor his top executives had any experience running a casino, so Mo Dalitz was kind enough to offer his services free of charge. The skimming that had plagued mob-controlled Las Vegas casinos for years continued at the Desert Inn after the straight-laced Hughes took over. One compelling piece of evidence was the Desert Inn's sudden poor performance after Hughes' takeover.
Having bought the Desert Inn, he called me and laughing on the telephone said, "Bob, how many more of these toys are available? We need a few more."
Hughes went on to buy the Sands, the Frontier, the Landmark, and the Silver Slipper hotel casinos, with some of the $500 million he'd made from selling TWA Airlines.
Hughes became the state's largest employer, owning a quarter of the business done in Las Vegas and contributing a seventh of the state revenues. A chronic insomniac, he wanted to watch movies on television when most people were asleep, but Las Vegas had no all-night TV stations. Las Vegas Sun publisher Hank Greenspun sold his television station, KLAS Channel 8, to Hughes in September 1967 for $3.6 million. The former movie mogul now had a 24/7 channel.
Howard Hughes would watch the movies all night long, and as a general rule, he would have an aide call the next day complaining about the movie that ran last night. And this was almost an everyday occurrence. It would happen a lot.
He was the one that decided what movies were going to be shown, what was available, and get this movie from California. And so it ended up that whatever movie was scheduled, if he didn't want to run that, he'd say, "I want to see this."
Hughes tried to buy the Stardust, but the Justice Department began a monopoly lawsuit against Hughes, which ended the casino buying spree.
He did two things. He nudged the mob out of Las Vegas by purchasing these casinos, but he also opened the door to corporate ownership of casinos. You had the passage of this Corporate Gaming Act in the late 60s that allowed corporations to own casinos. They had not previously been allowed to. This opened the door by legally allowing them to own. It was like something that Governor Laxalt said at the time. He said, Howard Hughes gave Nevada the good housekeeping seal of approval, in the sense that everybody knows Hughes is not a mobster. He's a legitimate businessman. If it's good enough for Hughes, maybe it's good enough for our company.
We needed a man like Mr. Hughes. We'd had some very bad, unfavorable national publicity. Since coming here, our national publicity has been far more favorable. He has given us what we deem to be almost instant respectability.
I think Howard Hughes played an enormous role in the evolution of Las Vegas. His man, Bob Mayhew, says that Howard Hughes didn't make the new Las Vegas, but he got it ready. By bringing a brand name that was not Murder, Inc. into Las Vegas, Howard Hughes helped separate the community from its past.
In 1967, Howard Hughes gave the Tournament of Champions to Stardust for free because he thought that the people coming to the tournament would bring germs to the hotel.
And to think that you would take this kind of an asset and just say, we'll turn it over gratis to someone else if they'll take us off the hook, was incomprehensible to me. Yes, it bothered me. And of course, the fact that his reason was that it would create too many germs bothered me even more.
Hughes was a war hawk. After all, he was a defense contractor. But there was one defense project Hughes despised: atomic tests. Every time a big hydrogen bomb was detonated on the Nevada test site, the tremors would shake the penthouse suite atop the Desert Inn and the frayed nerves of its sole resident. In a 1967 memo to Robert Mayhew, Hughes said, "Has anybody ever tried to compute the price paid for the privilege of laying waste, mutilating, and contaminating for all the days to come millions of acres of good, fertile, vegetative Nevada earth?"
By 1970, Hughes' health was clearly failing,
As evident by logs maintained by the aides, he was taking an increasing amount of narcotics, including Emprin, an injectable form of codeine. He was also ingesting massive amounts of Valium, referred to as blue bombers by Hughes. As a result of the drug use, he was often constipated and required frequent enemas. He insisted that his urine be preserved in jars and stored in the closet of the penthouse. He was sleeping more and eating less. His kidneys were shrinking as a result of his 20-year addiction to codeine. On November 25, 1970, the Desert Inn penthouse was empty.
They took this man out of here Thanksgiving Eve. It was a very cold night. When his doctor had told me 2 days earlier that he was so sick that he would not move him from the Desert Inn to Sunrise Hospital, which is not a mile away, unless it were a dire emergency.
Hughes left Las Vegas in November 1970, never to return. His Sumer Corporation continued to operate the Desert Inn after he died in 1976 and invested $54 million in an expansion and 14-story hotel room tower with reflecting glass windows. From 1978 to 1981, the TV show Vegas was a crime drama about a high-end private detective that had his office in the Desert Inn. The show was a one-hour advertisement featuring the DI running all over the world once a week. The Vegas days might have been the last of the true Old Vegas era, with celebrities happy to mingle with tourists during and in place of filming. The producer remembers losing track of Dean Martin, Tony Curtis, and star Robert Urich during a scheduled shoot. The producer said, "I sent an assistant to find them, and I lost the assistant. We were supposed to be shooting out back by the pool, but I went inside and everyone was crowded around a craps table, and Dean was holding the dice. What was I supposed to do?"
At the Desert Inn & Country Club, Las Vegas's preferred hotel, enjoy 24 hours of fun for just $22.50 per person, double occupancy. Golf on our 18-hole championship course, swing on our 4-lighted tennis courts, or splash in our beautiful Olympic pool. You'll also get preferential reservations for a great Broadway musical in the elegant Crystal Room. Imagine a luxury vacation in the heart of the Strip for just $22.50 a night. See your travel agent or call toll-free. The fabulous Desert Inn, Las Vegas.
Teeing it up at the Desert Inn Country Club and Spa in fabulous Las Vegas is more than just playing golf on one of the nation's finest courses. It's experiencing the luxury of a new world-class spa. It's feeling the elegance of impeccably appointed guest rooms. It's tasting the exotic cuisines of faraway places. It's smashing a tennis ball or soaking in the warm Nevada sunshine. It's knowing you've arrived. You've arrived at the Desert Inn.
In 1997, Sheraton added the Palms Tower.
Wine collections and high-end restaurants are just part of a casino's arsenal in an arms race for the premium player. The ultimate suite at the Desert Inn, for example, is over 9,000 square feet of pure luxury. Even the bathroom fixtures are gold. From the elegant marble entryway to the private pool, everything is designed for the comfort of those that can afford to play or to pay.
On a bad day, you'd have to have at least $500,000 credit line. On a normal day, it would be $1 million credit line and above to get into that type of accommodation. But we will rent those suites out, which range in size from the biggest ones, from about 8,300 to 9,300 square feet. We will rent them out. We have rented them out. They go for $15,000 a night. But we do provide a butler.
In the 1990s, the Desert Inn faded, an elegant, venerable dowager unable to measure up to the vital, fresh-faced kids on the block. On January 26, 2000, Monte Carlo cocktail waitress Cynthia J. won a world record slot jackpot of nearly $35 million on a Mega Bucks machine at the Desert Inn. Cynthia gave her 2-week notice at the Monte Carlo, paid off the debts of her family, and got married within weeks. About 6 weeks later, Cynthia was driving with her sister when they were hit from behind by a drunk driver at a red light. The collision killed her sister, Leila J., and shattered Jay Brennan's spine, who was paralyzed below the upper chest. The drunk driver was sentenced to at least 28 years in prison. It was his 20th arrest and at least his 5th drunk driving conviction. In April 2000, DI employees were murmuring about a visit from Steve Wynn, who spent 4 hours touring the hotel. The assumption is that Wynn wasn't there to play video keno. A few days later, the Desert Inn celebrated its 50th anniversary on April 24, 2000, with a week-long celebration. There was an invitation-only dinner which served the same food that was served on the opening night in 1950. One of the speakers at the dinner said, "For a change, Las Vegas was celebrating its history instead of tearing it down." Days later, Steve Wynn bought the Desert Inn for $270 million as a birthday gift for his wife, Elaine. Wynn also acquired the golf course and an adjacent 32-acre parcel. 4 months after celebrating its 50th anniversary, the DI closed on a dreary, rainy night at 2 a.m. on August 28, 2000. In 2001, the Junior League of Las Vegas moved the Morelli House from the Desert Inn Country Club Estates to downtown to serve as their headquarters. The custom mid-century home was built in 1959 by Sands Hotel orchestra leader Antonio Morelli. The Rat Pack would rehearse in the music room, and the house also hosted after-hour parties that included Nat King Cole, Tony Bennett, and Judy Garland. In 2001, the 42-year-old house still had the original carpet before being replaced, and the house is the only remaining structure from the Desert Inn property.
Steve Wynn announced that he was going to tear down the homes in the Country Club Estates. And we found out that this one was movable, the only one that could be rescued. And thanks to Mr. Wynn and the Molaski Properties, we were able to have it donated by Kay Glenn and move it here.
Really, I mean, almost a miracle. They don't like to do that. So your team that did the registry application really did their job.
As a native Las Vegan, we're used to seeing our history imploded rather than preserved. So what a joy to see something actually preserved and brought back to its grandeur of the 1950s and 60s, the heyday of Las Vegas.
Implosion of the Desert Inn in October 2001 was a bit more somber than some of the previous Las Vegas implosions, in part because 9/11 was just a few weeks earlier.
You're watching Eyewitness News at noon with Polly Gonzalez and John Gilbert.
Piece of Las Vegas Strip history is no more. Part of the Desert Inn Hotel was imploded early this morning with hundreds of onlookers witnessing that event. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Gilbert. Polly is off today. The ground along the Strip rumbled at about 2 this morning when the Desert Inn Hotel tower came crashing down. Eyewitness News reporter John Summers has more on the big blast.
And it's like the building stands there for a second or two, then all of a sudden it just starts to drop.
Hundreds packed the Strip to see this piece of Las Vegas history turned to dust. For many of the people here, the implosion of the Desert Inn was an event they wouldn't miss for the world. This woman says she's seen every Strip hotel implosion.
I've been in Las Vegas for 20 years, and all these buildings had a lot of meaning in my life, and family and friends that are no longer with us were in them, and I just felt that I had to see them leave.
She says she hates to see the DI go, but adds she knows something bigger and better is on the way. While a lot of people came to be part of the excitement, others will miss the Desert Inn.
Oh, just a tad bit. Good memories, though, really good memories. The Desert Inn will always have a place in Las Vegas, yeah.
John Summers, Eyewitness News.
John says many people were sad to see the Desert Inn go. Others were just excited about being able to see the implosion up close.
Little specks of the Desert Inn are blowing everywhere. Even though the tower is gone, bits of it will be left all along the Strip. The other towers were imploded in 2004. The DI captured the national attention in a way many other Las Vegas properties didn't. When Howard Hughes purchased the property, he lent an aura of corporate credibility to an industry under intense scrutiny for its mob connections. When Vegas aired, it brought the nation into the Desert Inn on a weekly basis. This January, the hotel casino added one last piece of lore to its legacy when a Las Vegas woman hit a $35 million megabucks jackpot, an all-time slot machine record. It was an image perhaps challenged only by the Sands, the one-time home of the Rat Pack. To a lot of people outside of Las Vegas, these two places, the Desert Inn and the Sands, really meant Las Vegas. These were the places that represent the images of Las Vegas in a far greater way than the Dunes, the Aladdin, the Hacienda, and the Landmark. I wonder whether some of the reaction to the DI is a backlash of sorts against modern gaming and Steve Wynn. Whether or not Wynn is right about the need to replace the current building. They might reach a point where they say, gee, do we have to get rid of this place too? Former Desert Inn president Burt Cohen said that the DI was the hotel on the Strip for Las Vegans. The people who lived here regarded the DI as the epitome of class. It was really something to have a wedding or other social event at the DI, and it maintained that class and elegance over the years. Cohen also said, it is unfair to compare the old Desert Inn to the new mega resort. The DI was a small, intimate hotel, but if anyone can bring the class that the Desert Inn had to the operation of a large hotel, it would be Steve Wynn. I believe the history of the Desert Inn will carry on with great flourish with the Wynn Las Vegas.
The Desert Inn was more sedate in those days. To get comped in the coffee shop at the Desert Inn, you thought that was the greatest thing in the world. It was run very close to the vest. It was, in my opinion then, the top of the line, the class of Las Vegas.
When you went to the Desert Inn, you put on heels. When you went to the Desert Inn, where you go? We're going to the DI. Oh, wait a minute. You took off your windbreaker and you put on a suit jacket. You know, the Desert Inn it was the Desert Inn Country Club. It had a golf course and tennis courts.
We had a lounge at the Desert Inn. And I loved Keeley and I loved Louis. I couldn't go out to the cemetery to bring Louis back, but we had in town somebody who was just as good and as charismatic as Louis Prima, and that was Sam Butera. So I put them together, and it was magic. It was absolutely magic. They fought like cats and dogs, but they sure projected. They were pros, and Keeley's voice was never better. And Sam is an ultimate professional. And you couldn't get into the room. Could not get into the room. It was a touch of the old time.
90-year-old former Bell captain Jack Butler said, I was the first one in when it opened, so I wanted to be the last one out. It's very sad. I hang out here all the time since my wife died. My car only knows how to come to this place. Tony Clark was not sad because she accepted it, saying that things move on and life changes. She is happy for Steve and Elaine.
I'm Steve Wynn, and this is my new hotel, the only one I've ever signed my name to. Can I get down now?
The $2.7 billion Wynn Tower opened in 2005 as the most expensive privately funded construction project in the nation.
Hello, I'm over here. 3 years ago, I stood over there, introducing you to Wynn Las Vegas. Now I'm following it up the best way I know how. This is Encore. Next time, we do this in the lobby.
Encore opened in 2008, and the Wynn Resort is now the world's 7th largest hotel. Tony Clark, a pioneer proponent of local high fashion and a civic leader who spent 7 decades sponsoring and promoting cultural arts in Las Vegas, died on October 4th, 2006. There were 3 time capsules buried over the years. One was buried in 1985 for the 35th anniversary, one in 1992 for Sinatra's birthday, and one was buried at the casino entrance for the 50th anniversary, which included gaming chips, menus, postcards, and employee photos from the last 50 years. The plaque for the 50th anniversary time capsule read, "The Desert Inn Resort, Vegas, done right, since 1950. time capsule buried on April 24, 2000, to commemorate the Desert Inn Resort's 50th birthday, to be opened 50 years later on April 24, 2050. But there doesn't seem to be any information on where the time capsules are located or even if they are still buried under the Wynn Resort.